Welcome to another episode of Family Goals with David Pollack and Pastor Jay. This is part 2 in our interview with Jeff Foxworthy. So tell us how you became a Christian.
Oh, I was 7 years old.
So your mom grew up in church?
And even my dad. My dad was there then. They split up when I was like 9. And I was in church one Sunday sitting there listening to the message, and you know, good old Southern Baptist Church. They're probably playing Just As I Am, and I looked at my mom, and it was the invitation. I said, "I'm going," and my mom had me by the collar. But it was so. To this day, it was like the Holy Spirit was pulling me out and going, "I'm claiming you. Come on." And my mom had me by the collar, and she said, "You're too little. You're too little." She wouldn't let me go down. Well, being Jeff, I'm raising hell the whole way home, to the point that they called the preacher and said, "He's mad. He wants to go down, and we're saying he's too little." So the preacher comes over to the house, and he and I sit there and talk. And the preacher goes, "He knows what he's doing." And that was Sunday afternoon, and I said, "We're going to Sunday night church, because if the world ends this week and I end up in hell because you didn't let me go down, we're going to Sunday night church." And we did, and I went down. And so from that moment, I just felt like, for lack of I was claimed. But I had a real struggle, because like I would look at these people in the church, and it was that straight line: don't drink, don't smoke, don't cuss. And I go, "Oh, no, I'm not wired like that. I'm kind of wired
At 7, you knew this?
Yes, young. Jeez. I was like, I'm a wavy line. I'm not a straight line." And so it was a very big dichotomy for me through my youth. I'm like, man, everybody says if you're in church, you got to be like this, and I'm not like that. And it took a long time for me to realize God's sitting there kind of chuckling, going, "Dude, I put you together. I know exactly how you're made, and I don't need you to be this. I need you to reach people that are also made like this." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool."
You know what you said a second ago, I think a lot of parents need to hear too, is I think it's interesting too. And I've had, Nicholas, who's 13 now, Leah, who's 11, and both of mine got saved at a little bit of a later age. And I was very much the type of person, because I felt like at any time I could go with Nicholas in his bedroom and have him say the prayer. Like I could do that. Like I could force that on him. I could make him make a choice. But I was really cognizant of, I wanted them to feel it. Like, and Leah asked me, like, when will I know? I was like, "You'll know. Like you'll absolutely feel it. Like your kids are going to experience, like a lot of y'all that grow up in church and your kids are in church, like God's going to make his presence felt, and they're going to feel it, and he's going to remove those scales, and it's going to be clear as day." But I do think it's a question we've had in a small group before, is like, "Hey, do I push the envelope with them?" And you obviously have been around for years with that too. I mean, how do you feel about that? Like I wanted them to be very clear in their decision making. Your mom's fighting you down the aisle, like, right? Like, why? Or do you push the envelope? Like, how have you always handled that?
Yeah, I don't think you push the envelope, because I think every child is different. And so Jolin's our oldest. When he was 4 years old, he understood it. He wanted to get baptized. And I was in seminary at the time, and we were learning how to baptize people. And I would actually practice baptizing him in the swimming pool. And so he's literally been baptized thousands of times.
And so you might be a redneck.
But why do we practice that? Just out of curiosity. You needed to walk through it and hear it out audibly and timing. Like let me be honest.
I don't know that I really needed to practice it.
Okay, but a lot of your job is really difficult. That's not one of them that's really difficult.
Well, that's not a difficult thing, but it was something close to him that he wanted to get baptized. I think it's maybe more, we just did it a lot because he wanted it. But we pushed him to wait till he was 8. And then our youngest child, Jessie, we kept thinking, what's going on? And she wasn't baptized, I think, till she was maybe 12. So it was a matter, each child's different. I think Julia was 8. But then Jolin did a spontaneous baptism. What were you, 14? When you came down front? And yeah.
You know what's unfortunate with the Pollack family, or the Family Goals podcast, is we only have 3 mics. We didn't have enough funds to purchase 3. So
Jolyn have a mic.
Jolyn got the shaft because of our guest. Jolyn usually has a mic, Jeff, but
now I feel bad. I feel like I rooted Jolyn.
So he was 14. So you didn't. What about salvation with Jesse?
Well, we kept. I mean, she's heard it thousands and thousands of times, and she prayed the prayer. But as far as baptism and going public,
she was 12.
Yeah, she waited. So.
Yeah. I just think it's an interesting thing to juggle as a parent, as a Christian parent who really wants their kids to go down that path, and that's what you really want for them. I feel like God's going to make it very clear for them. If not, you're going to be all the time. And listen, I'll be honest. I'll confess right now. Like, I'm still the guy that prays the prayer just to make sure it's still there. Like, I'm still that guy in my 30s that do that. But I think I don't know. I really wanted my kids to have that moment that I had when it was like, oh my goodness, and it just grabbed a hold of you. So I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, but
then I think getting to the point where they're developing a faith of their own.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, with our kids growing up in they're preachers' kids, and so there's all of these jokes. I don't know. You probably have some preacher jokes or some.
Oh, yeah.
You got any preacher jokes?
Yeah, I
always felt bad for preachers because I always felt like preachers never got to hear the good jokes, because people are like, oh, it's the preacher. Don't tell that one. Don't tell that one. I always felt bad for preachers.
Well, we want you to drop one at some point, and if you could you can do it now. Are you somebody we can just push on a button and it plays?
No, I'm too old for that.
I had a guy. I told one of the guys in our men's discipleship group that. I think Foxworthy is going to be on the podcast. And he goes, "Oh, I got a joke. I want you to share with him."
He's never heard that before.
And I said, well, "What's the joke?" He said, "Well, it's not clean. I can't."
Well, then
so then he didn't tell me the joke.
Tell you. So to my point, you never get to hear the good joke.
Hey, so when we were at game day, and Jeff was the celebrity picker. This has been a little while ago, but he did great jokes about other colleges. So give me the best 2 or 3. You might be a redneck if you're at so and so school.
Well, they called and they said, "Can you do? You might be a Texas A&M fan or Florida Gator." So, one of them was, if when you sign up for fall classes, they ask if you would also like to play football, you might be a Vanderbilt Commodore.
What was the Florida one?
If you have the ugliest uniforms in college football, and I know there's probably a Florida fan out there, that's the ugliest uniform and every combination of it's the ugliest. I am such a dog that I think the worst thing, the second worst thing that happened in 2019 was COVID-19. The worst thing was Florida beat Georgia. That's
By the way, I don't think like there are Georgia fans out there, and we're probably talking to a lot of them. This dude texts me probably once a week on recruiting. Yeah. Like, he's all in. Like, this isn't he's not like a fair weather Georgia fan. Like, he's following recruiting. He'd be like, "Are we going to get so and so? Are we going to get so and so soon? Are we going to get so and so?" I mean, he is all in.
So what are your thoughts
Die
on
hard.
Georgia, #1 in the nation, national championship this year? What are your thoughts?
I don't say that. You growing up in Georgia, I don't
jinxing?
say
Is
that.
that
I'm totally with Kirby. We need to get better every week. We're playing against ourselves. We need to get better every week, and if we do, the outcome will take care of itself. So the journey is more important.
That's called years of being an Atlanta sports fan.
That's called 28-3 in the Super Bowl.
That's called 4th and 22 or 2nd and 26 against Alabama. Like, it's just we've been so like, listen, when I'm on TV, I don't know, like PTI asked me about it, and they're asking me about how are Georgia fans. I'm like, listen, nothing to see here.
Nothing to see. Yes.
There's nothing. Move on. We got a cute, you know what? We're just going to hope we stumble into the SEC championship. Yep. Hopefully we stumble into a natty. Like, hopefully we can just get there. If we get there, Now, listen, I don't know if the Braves changes this or not. It didn't for me. Like, I was excited. I was jacked up for the Braves. But it's deep-rooted. Like, he's an LSU guy, by the way. I didn't know if you knew that. But
my wife's from Louisiana.
Okay.
So, but here's the deal. I tell people the Braves this year, it was so fun because it was unexpected. Because when Acuna got hurt, I said, season done. We're done.
July, your odds are awful. You're under 500.
Anthopoulos does such an amazing job of bringing these guys in, not giving anything up. And so we didn't expect it. And it's like, oh, my gosh, how fun. I didn't want to be ranked #1. as early as we were. So if we get to the end of this road and Georgia doesn't win the national championship, the pain is going to be so bad because people are going, you're the best, you're the best, you're the best. Well, it's the same way with the Braves in the 90s every year. Oh, we're the best, we're the best, we're the best. When they didn't deliver, it just broke your heart. Mm-hmm. So it was almost better with the way the Braves were. It's like, oh, I didn't see that coming. How cool.
It's so exciting.
Yeah.
So exciting.
Yeah.
Nothing to see here. Move along, Georgia fans.
Nothing to see here.
So getting back to testimony and kids growing up.
Oh, we're not doing a sports podcast?
Face of their own. Well, we can talk about sports. It's part of our podcast.
You know what I think is can I steer it for a minute?
You could
drive it, bro.
So
just don't crash it.
So a few years ago, I'm doing an interview, and the lady asked me a question. She said, okay, you do stand-up, you write books, you host TV shows, you do voiceovers. Which one are you? And I thought, well, that's an interesting question. Nobody's ever put it that way. And I said to her, well, all of those are things that I do, and I love what I do. I don't know why I can do it. I don't know why. You can play football, and I don't know why if you say to me, write 20 jokes about Thanksgiving, I can just sit down and do it. I don't know why I can do it. It's totally God. It's a gift. So I said, all of those are things that I do, and I love what I do, and I think I'm probably doing what I'm supposed to be doing. But who I am is I'm a child of God. I'm a husband. I'm a father. I'm a son. I'm a brother. I'm a person in this community. I said, so through the course of my life, what I do may change multiple times, but hopefully who I am stays consistent. And I think, especially for men, that's something we really struggle with. So much of our identity is in what we do. Mm-hmm. And you think about when you ask a little kid, if you ask a little girl, what do you want to be when you grow up? And she says, I want to be a mom. That's a totally acceptable and cool answer. How many little boys have you ever said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And had them say, I want to be a dad. I want to be a father. They don't. I want to be a fireman. I want to be a football player. I want to be a basketball. So somewhere culturally, we've wired it that way, where it's okay for a girl to want to be a mom, but a little boy never thinks about being a dad. And it goes back to our identity. And for me, it went back to my priorities. Like, I knew what it felt like not to have a dad. So even though I had a job that took me to a different city every night, and that's kind of the struggle. I mean, you know this with what you do. I spent 15 years, I would rent a plane and say I had a show in St. Louis on Friday night. I would fly to St. Louis, I would do the show, and I would do everything I needed to do before it. Meet people, take pictures, sign stuff, whatever. But as soon as I walked off stage, I walked out the back door, and I got back on that plane, and I flew home. I may not get home till 2:30 in the morning, but Saturday morning I got up, and I went to soccer games, or I went to softball games, or I went to basketball games. And then that afternoon I'd get back on the plane, and I'd fly to Minneapolis and do a show. And for 15 years, and I look back and I go, when did I sleep? I learned to sleep on a plane, but I spent a fortune doing that, but it gave me 100 more days a year with my kids because they were the priority. So even though I'm a comedian, even though I'm on TV, or even though I'm writing, my identity and my priority was to be a dad. And one of the ways you be a great dad, and you and I have hit on this a little bit, I had all girls. And so I wanted to love their mother in such a way that I set a high standard for any guy that they were going to go after. I mean, I've been married 36 years, and most of the
flowers.
time,
Tell them about the flowers.
I buy my wife flowers every single week.
Rainey gets flowers every week.
Every week.
Every single week. Every single week, I get my wife
what
flowers.
What kind of flowers?
Well, she likes iris is the best, but I mean, it's whatever's pretty. But I buy her flowers every single week. I take her on a date. I treat her like she's my girlfriend. And so my girls watching that growing up, you know, and I like I've been married 36 years. I still open the car door for her in the garage when nobody's there to see it. And when we get there, I get out and I open her door. Well, my son-in-law, the first time doesn't do that, I go, it says a lot to her if you just go around and open that door. Lets her know how important she is. He does it, so. But I think as a parent, whether you're a wife or a husband, that relationship you have in your marriage, I don't know anybody that has a great marriage that isn't a great parent. And what I didn't have an example of a great dad. So I started looking around and go, oh, that guy's a great dad. So as I got older, that's whose head I went and picked. I went and looked at guys that were great dads and said, tell me what I need to know about being a dad. What do I not know that I need to know? What do I need to know about having a great marriage? Go pick somebody's head. I mean, I would imagine you do that in ball when you see a guy that's got a move you don't have. You go over and go, dude, teach me how to do that.
And nowadays we have so much access to podcasts and info. Like you have access to more information than ever. Like if you want to be an expert on something, there's not an excuse.
Well, there's not an excuse. You can learn anything you want to know on anything. But it's also looking around and going, like I always told my kids, I said, you look around in life and you look at somebody and you go, I want my life to look like that. I said, I guarantee you, whoever you pick, they're not a self-centered person. They're an other-centered person. But you look at your aunt, your uncle, your cousin, the guy down the street, and you go, oh, that guy knows, he's got it figured out. He knows how to live a good life, or she knows how to live a good life. I guarantee you they're not self-focused. That's one of the keys to life, is not being I don't know a self-focused person that is a happy person. Everybody I know that has a degree of contentment, they're others focused.
So we've talked about this before, but so you talked about that. That's what you did with your kids, but obviously your kids grow up, your kids leave, and now, it's you and Randy, but you're doing tours. And talk about, me and you've talked about this, and I think this is awesome. The group goes out and does its own thing. What would Jeff do?
Well, like when we were doing the blue collar tour, it's like the guy, we'd get through with it, and the guy was like, come on, Fox, let's go have a beer or whatever. I don't think a beer is going to send you to hell. Alcohol has just never really been my thing. It just didn't do it for me. But here's what I knew about me, and here's what I came from. Drugs never did it for me. Alcohol didn't do it for me. But I appreciate a good-looking girl. And I knew if I went in there and had a beer, and we were sitting around having fun, and I might have another one, and then if somebody pretty that smelled good sat down next to me, I knew what I was vulnerable to. But here's the thing about trust. You gain trust, whether it's with your kid, with your spouse, with your friends. You gain it a drop at a time. One drop in the cup, one drop in the cup, one drop in the cup. You lose it all at once. Once you break trust, you empty that cup.
I've never heard that. I love that.
And I knew what I was vulnerable to. And so I would say, you know what, I'm just going to go to the room. I'm going to call home and order room service. Come on, you fuddy-duddy. I'm like, no, I'm actually not being a fuddy-duddy. I'm being wise, because I'm not going to walk into a place that I'm going to, A, break that trust with my wife, and B, break that trust with my kids. And I'm telling you, when you break that trust with your kids, it's never the same. It's like you break that porcelain bowl, you might glue it back together, but it doesn't look the same. And so
you are dropping some incredible
Isn't that
wisdom.
Awesome?
Yeah. As we talk a lot on the podcast about boundaries. And I've always applied, I have strong convictions about not drinking, but I call it the Billy Graham rule. And Billy Graham is an amazing example to follow. Of course, the impact that he's had, but if you just look at his character and his example, but Billy Graham would never put himself in a room or in an opportunity with someone of the opposite sex, alone with someone. So he wouldn't ride in an elevator with someone alone. He wouldn't obviously
ride in a car.
Elevator,
you got to be pretty fast to pull that off.
That seems aggressive.
His standard was so high. Yeah. Like before he got into a hotel room, they would go in there and take the TV out. They would take the TV out of the, they would.
Wow.
Yeah, he had some really strong
Good for
convictions.
him.
But I think the reason you set those boundaries, like you said, is not that you were against going out and having a beer with your buddies, but it was like, what could that lead to?
Well, I knew what I was vulnerable to. And I mean, if somebody said, hey, you want to do heroin, I'd go, hell no. But it's like, say hello to Chandra. It's like, hello, Chandra. So it's like, just be wise. Don't put yourself in an environment where you could break that trust. And so when I'm saying that, I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm saying I'm imperfect. I'm vulnerable to this. And so avoid it at all costs. And I look back, I'm so thankful that I had a job that didn't put me in an environment where I was around good-looking women. I'm not. I'm by myself on the road, so.
Well, you stayed out of some of those situations where you would have found it, but.
Yes, yeah, but that was a deliberate thing.
Yeah.
The other thing you mentioned, and I think this is where a lot of parents make mistakes. You said in order to be a good dad, you first need to be a good husband. And so many families we see today become kid-centric, where everything revolves around the kids and the kids' activities to the point where mom and dad are going in different directions. But I think what you said was, hey, if you want to be a good dad, be a good husband first.
Are you trying to video? We're videoing this, right?
Yeah.
So why do you have your Greystone hats faced the wrong way?
Well,
you're not representing.
I mean, you're not showing the G.
I was
just
actually
out of
going to give these
curiosity.
as gifts to you guys.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying you could turn that around. Before
that was a total ADD moment.
That was an ADD moment. People said they appreciated that about the podcast. But before you go to that, I want to share something that I just failed on miserably. So me and my wife just had a serious conversation about this. So I have boundaries like you talk about. I don't text other women. If I get a text from somebody, I put their spouse or my wife on the text. I have tons of group text messages, but I try to stay away from that because I've seen that do bad things personally. I've seen it, and it's not good. But what's interesting about that is I don't do it for work. Like I have a couple of girls that text me for work for schedule purposes, and I don't even think about it because it's work. It's just work. And I asked Lindsay about that, and she's like, that doesn't bother me. I mean, I just thought in my head, but they texted me about work, and they said, we're not picking you up because I fly out as late as I can Thursday to spend time with the kids, run practices. We do football practice and basketball practice usually on Thursday night. Well, they told me on Thursday night that they couldn't pick me up. The runners were going to sleep because it was so late that I was getting in, and they said to just ride with somebody. Well, I rode with another woman 20 minutes down the road in a car. And I didn't even think about telling my wife about it. It was 1 a.m. You fly in late. And then I told her about it Saturday night. I was like, I got in late and me and so-and-so rode. And she was like, wait a minute, you rode in the car with another woman? She's like, how would you feel about that if I did that? And it's a total fail job. Like and I've Ubered before. And I was like, I've Ubered with a woman driver. She was like, are you sitting in the front seat? Are you talking to him? But it was it was not a calm conversation. Like she was mad. She was really upset and she had every right to be. Like, and I'm just telling you that story because again, it's another opportunity that I put myself in a situation that you shouldn't put yourself in. And it's about respect. Like it's also about respect to my spouse. I wouldn't want her to do that in a million years. And there's no way I would justify that. Her driving at 1 a.m. with somebody else in a car, down the road. And so what is my next thing is I have to, next time I'm landing this week again late, I'm going to Uber, no matter who's at the airport, no matter, who's there. But it's just another example. Like you put those guardrails and we talk about guardrails all the time. That's a fail, man.
Well, and we don't drive off the road. Most of the people that go into the woods don't make a 90-degree turn.
It's a slow
drift. Mm-hmm. And once that becomes okay, then so then the next time it's late, you haven't eaten. Is it okay for you and this woman to go sit there and get something to eat? Yeah, now you're drifting a little further off the road. And that's how it happens. You don't get in the car and rip your clothes. I mean, it's a slow drift. And so I think you have to have, what is my goal? It's almost like the Georgia football. What is my goal this year? My goal is to win it all. I want to finish strong and win it all. Well, same thing in your marriage. What is my goal here? So if I'm doing something that's got the potential to take me away from that goal, I need to correct that. Yep. I heard one of the players say, I think it was Nolan Smith, said on Monday we go to the doctor and we fix what's wrong with us. Well, I mean, good for you. Good for Lindsay to say, you know what? don't let that happen, because
It was a fail.
that's a drift that can go wrong.
Yep.
Thank you so much for joining us for part 2 of our interview with Jeff Foxworthy. I absolutely love how he said we need to do whatever it takes to protect the most important relationships in our lives, the relationship with our spouse and the relationship that we have with our kids. And I think an important question for each of us to ask is, have we set up those guardrails in our lives? What boundaries, what convictions do we need to set up so that we can protect those important relationships? We have one more week with Jeff Foxworthy, so I hope you'll join us next week for Family Goals with David Pollack and Pastor Jay for our final installment with Jeff Foxworthy.